On the slopes of the climb to Mont, the field was decimated by a war of attrition. One by one, big names were eliminated from the back of the pack. One notable casualty was American TJ Van Garderen. Bradley Wiggins defended his overall lead with the help of a well-oiled team. No one, though, could respond to the brilliant late attack of Louis Vistre, who scored his best-ever career win. 3 days to go, and the challengers Alejandro Valverde and Levi Leipheimer still look very dangerous in the wings. Up next, it's stage 6 of Paris-Nice. Welcome to today's Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra as we continue our march into the heart of France and Provence, and an area which is reputed to have 300 days of sunshine every year. It's stage 6, 111 miles from Suze-la-Rousse to Sisteron, right in the very heart of Provence and on the edge of the Alps. I'm Paul Sherwin, alongside me is Bob Roll, but before we go on to stage 6, Bob, what did that mountaintop finish tell us yesterday about the top men of the overall standings?
Bradley Wiggins looked very strong in his defense of the leader's yellow jersey, but he was put under serious pressure by Louis Vistre, who won the stage and got a time bonus, moving himself into second place, as well as Levi Leipheimer, still solid there, and Alejandro Valverde. All of those men with a chance to win Paris-Nice overall.
Yes, just with 3 days left to go before we get to Nice, Bradley Wiggins is still looking very comfortable in that yellow jersey. But yesterday's stage, despite the fact we expected to see the gaps open, actually brought a lot of the contenders closer together. There is Vistre up into second place, looking for 6 seconds. Levi Leipheimer hovering there in third at 10 seconds, and Valverde in fourth. A little bit further down, though, the big loser on the day, I have to say, was TJ Van Garderen, the American rider on the BMC racing team. He now is looking for 39 seconds, but he does, let's not forget, lead the Best Young Rider competition. As we go out now, Bob, onto the open roads of France, it's a very tough day in the saddle, isn't it, for stage 6?
It most certainly is a very tough day. No rest for the wicked out on the open roads of Paris-Nice on today's stage. 5 categorized climbs, 111 miles, plus a tough technical circuit on the streets of Sisteron before the finish. This could be a day for the sprinters. It also could be a day for the breakaway, which we haven't seen so far in Paris-Nice this year.
Well, the roads we're going over today, Napoleon Bonaparte used to march out of exile and all the way back up to Paris. We will charge with the survivors of Paris-Nice here this afternoon in the opposite direction to finish in the medieval city of Sisteron. And I can tell you right now, there's a 7-man breakaway off the front end of the main field in today's stage of Paris-Nice. We'll be right back with the action after this. As we look out over the Alps of the High Provence, we can now join the 7-man leading group, and it took a long time before the breakaway formed this morning. In fact, it was after 66 kilometers or 45 miles of racing that 6 men managed to get clear, and they were eventually joined by a 7th to make this 7-man leading group, who currently have a 3-minute advantage over the main field. Jens Voigt is in this move, Daniel Navarro in the pale blue jersey there of Saxo Bank. Finally, Luis Leon Sanchez, the man we've been looking to get into a breakaway since the very start. Anthony Geslin of France, Michael Chirel of 82R, Frederic Verkelen, the king of the mountains in the polka dot jersey. Very good tactical move by him. And Simon Gesch of the brand new former Skill Shimano squad.
The Skill Shimano squad now called 1T4I. And Jens Voigt also for Radio Shack in the group. Luis Leon Sanchez, the Rabobank rider, right in the middle of your screen there in the orange jersey, has finally made a breakaway. Rabobank is desperate for some results in Paris-Nice. They paid a lot of money for Luis Leon Sanchez to be amongst their number, and he needs to deliver some results. Nothing to crow about so far for Rabobank, one of the biggest teams in professional cycling.
Well, these are magnificent racing roads now as we look down. Weather a little bit warmer for the riders this afternoon, 54 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy, winds coming out of the north at 12 miles an hour, so not too much and not too blustery for the riders here this afternoon. But I suppose, Bob, some of the biggest stories is this has been a very tough Paris-Nice. In fact, this morning 5 riders did not come out to start. Dimitri Fofanov didn't start, Remy Poriol, Martin Neyens, Gustav Larsen, the man who won the opening day's individual time trial, didn't start either, and Klaas Lodewijk. I think that's an indication, Bob, of how tough this race has been.
I think it's been the most difficult Paris-Nice we've seen in many, many years. We have to go way back to maybe the mid-'80s to see a more mountainous Paris-Nice. A ton of King of the Mountain points up for grabs, probably more than any other week-long stage race we've seen in quite a long while. In this early part of the season, Paris-Nice has been absolutely a brutal stage race so far.
Yeah, well, it has. In fact, we've had 3 abandons out on the road. I suppose the most notable, of course, Bob, Ivan Basso really has not got into this Paris-Nice at all, and Bout Malema, one of the big riders from Team Rabobank.
Ivan Basso really struggling throughout this week's racing. We've seen him at the back of the peloton, not mixing it at the front. He's been involved in a few crashes, and now he's been obliged to drop out of a very tough Paris-Nice 2012.
Well, you know, this race is going to go down to the wire, isn't it? Because the riders, they're all still only separated by mere seconds. And on this occasion, for all of a sudden, Team Sky have decided they want to control this here this afternoon.
Well, forget about the earlier hype about passing over the yellow jersey. Team Sky has done a tremendous amount of work to keep that on the shoulders of Bradley Wiggins. Also a little bit of a dangerous situation. They've been chasing hard for a number of kilometers, and the gap just went up by 5 seconds. And the man in orange right there about the middle of the rotation, Luis Leon Sanchez, is 3 minutes 51 seconds behind the leader Bradley Wiggins to start the stage, so he's getting into the danger zone here.
Well, you can see the polka dot jersey on the back there of Frederic Verkelen, the rider from Vacansoleil. He's amassed maximum points out on the course so far this afternoon and amassed a massive lead in that competition. And I would say mathematically now, Bob, he cannot be beaten over the weekend. All he's got to do is just ride himself into Nice and finish at the summit of the Col d'Ez, because he has a 35-point advantage over the second-place rider, Luis Angel Mate.
Well, everything has gone in the right direction for Vacansoleil on this week's Paris-Nice. Gustav Larsen won the opening time trial. Of course, Louis Vester won yesterday's big stage to Monde, and they had the King of the Mountain jersey just about wrapped up with that man Verkelen. Great riding by the Vacansoleil squad.
Well, they've been very aggressive throughout the whole of this year's Paris-Nice. They've been on the attack. They've been looking for moves. I have to say, this young man here, he's going to walk away with a very fine title. And let's not forget his own teammate, Louis Vester, is still a threat to possibly win this bike race overall.
Well, to have the polka dot jersey and conceivably the yellow jersey at the end of the week's racing for a smaller team like Vacansoleil, fantastic results so far. Compare that to a team like BMC or Rabobank with absolutely no results so far, and you got to wonder about the motivation of some of the riders in those teams.
Well, the worker on the front for Team Sky here is Danny Pate, the American rider from Colorado Springs, born and raised in Colorado Springs. Normally, Bob, if you go to a gym and you ride a bike in the gym, you're going to work at around about 100, 120 watts, and that'll bring you out to a fine sweat very, very quickly indeed. But Danny Pate yesterday was producing some incredible watts on the slopes of the climb.
And for a nearly 5-hour stage, which is quite remarkable in itself because it's only 178 kilometers, averaged over 300 watts of power throughout that 5 hours. He is a very fit man and working very hard for Bradley Wiggins, the race leader, and his teammate.
Well, he did actually peak a little bit, didn't he, on the run in towards the finishing line, because that's when he was riding at the front end of the main field to make sure that Bradley Wiggins was ideally positioned for the start of the climb. And he actually just tickled 400 watts before the start of the climb up to Monde. And quite impressive.
Yes, very impressive. He averaged 375 watts for 20 minutes leading up to the very final climb. That's a great ride by Danny Pate.
Well, I tell you what, if I had 3 light bulbs, you could keep those going for the whole of the afternoon, and that's specifically what we'd like this afternoon. These, Bob, you know these roads, I know these roads. These are great racing roads, aren't they?
Fantastic racing roads. The riders lined out in one line, doing a hard bit of work and not taking that much time out of the breakaway. It's been a very tough stage again today in Paris-Nice.
Well, very, very rare does a man get to 31, 32 years of age and decide to change the disciplines of the sport. But that man did. Jean-Christophe Perrault, silver medalist at the Olympic Games in Beijing in the mountain bike. Then all of a sudden, he said, I'm going to try this road racing lark. And he's not done too badly, has he? He
most certainly has not. One of the top Frenchmen, especially in stage races, where he has always had a very consistently high overall placing, even in the Tour de France. 9th overall last year. That's really, really good racing for a bit of an older pro, turned pro when he was, like you said, 31, 34 years old now, and a top 10 finish in the Tour de France. That's fantastic fantastic result.
Well, this is Konstantin Sitsov. Briefly, we noticed on the front, a former winner of the Tour of Georgia. Now, I had a look at L'Equipe this morning, Bob. That's a French sports magazine that covers all sports, and they have put the chances of victory down into percentages. They've only got 4 guys who they think can win the race now. Bradley Wiggins, 60% chance for him, 20% chance for Levi Leipheimer, 15% for Louis Visser, and only 5% chance of winning Paris-Nice overall for Alejandro Valverde. Well, I'm not quite sure I agree with that, because I would give Levi Leipheimer a much higher chance than a 20% chance at victory. The riders continue their move down towards Sisteron, which they will reach after this 111-mile stage here this afternoon, and they are now starting to crank it up quite a bit, stretching the main field out into a very, very long line. It could be spelling doom for the 7 leaders, but they still lead this race by just inside of 3 minutes. Tomorrow, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with Stage 7 of Paris-Nice. The longest day on the bike. The penultimate stage offers no respite. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern on the NBC Sports Network. These marvellous little towns of Provence, the 7-man breakaway tickling a 3-minute advantage. The polka dot jersey there on the left-hand side. He'll be very happy with his day this afternoon, Bob, because he's got himself the maximum points over all of those climbs. He's almost got that in the bag.
You can't say it's lucky that Vukelen found the lead group of 7 riders. You have to go out and fight for that, but it's a great way to consolidate your lead in any King of the Mountain competition. He's gotten maximum points on all the climbs throughout the day, and he will win the King of the Mountain jersey at the end of Paris-Nice, assuming he doesn't have any sort of bad luck along the way.
Well, Bradley Wiggins now looking very solid in this leader's yellow jersey. I spoke this morning to his team manager, Sean Yates, who was very impressed with the job of work done by the team yesterday. He said that Bradley is in very good form. He doesn't have anything to do. There's nowhere where he can get himself any more time. He's just got to sit back and conserve his energy right the way down to that final time trial up the Col d'Ez. But he did bring up one name as being a danger man, Levi Leipheimer. They're concerned about the American Levi.
Levi Leipheimer is on great form thus far in the season. He's already had one stage win earlier in the year, the Tour of San Luis. So Levi Leipheimer is looming large, and it's a good idea to keep an eye on him throughout the rest of the race if you're Bradley Wiggins.
Well, Bob, over the last couple of years, we've talked about the amazing rise of American professional cycling. We're now, this year, 3 professional teams on the international. So just catching a quick glimpse there. Those are the riders from Green Edge in those dark jerseys there. And that was a team put together by a gentleman by the name of Jerry Ryan. And he was he's a great supporter of all kinds of sports in Australia. In fact, he had a win in the great horse race, the Melbourne Cup, with a horse by the name of American. But he loves cycling, and he's now put together for the next 3 years a $60 million budget for that team, an Australian team, to get into the Tour de France.
And they have had some good results already. All the Australian riders very keen to race here in Europe. They had the team time trial win to open up Tirreno Adriatico just a couple of days ago down in Italy. And also Simon Gerrans, who's been racing well in Paris-Nice. He was able to win the Tour Down Under, maybe the most important team, or the most important race for an Australian team.
Well, they wanted to start with a bang, and they certainly did. And Simon Gerrans, he's had an awful lot of bad luck in this year's Paris-Nice. They were expecting in the middle 3 or 4 days to see a victory come from Simon Gerrans. He got very, very close to Alejandro Valverde, but after that, found himself on the ground. And it's tough in a bike race like this to have a nasty crash like that and try and get over it. It takes you 2 or 3 days to get better.
Yes, most certainly. The adrenaline kicks in, and for the rest of the stage, sometimes you're okay. And the next day even, sometimes you're okay. But 2 days later, oftentimes, that's when it hits you like a ton of bricks, and it becomes a very difficult thing to overcome when riders are at such a high level of every bike race throughout the season. You have to be at your best nowadays to win any race of the year.
46 kilometers to go. That's 27 miles of racing, and it's now 2 minutes and 50 seconds. I always get excited when we come to race bikes in this part of the world, Bob, because it really is a magnificent part of the world for racing. We talked a little bit earlier about the roads, but they're actually quite unforgiving, aren't they? Because they've got a very thick, heavy, gravelly surface on them, and it stops the bike rolling along easily.
This is not the hard, smooth pavement that you really enjoy as a cyclist. A little bit of a problem here to the machine of Tony Martin. Slipped his chain going through that technical right-hand bend in the small village. Very narrow roads. sometimes it's easy when you're shifting from the big chain ring to the small chain ring. If you have any pressure on the chain at all, oftentimes it skips off. It looks like that's what happened to Tony Martin. He'll kick it back up into that big ring and try to get back into the front of the peloton.
A big reminder here of the 7 riders who lead this bike race, and as I said, it took them about 45 miles to get away from the front end of the peloton. In fact, in the first hour of racing, Alejandro Valverde got caught out himself. The bunch split into a 26-man leading group with nearly all of the overall contenders, and Valverde had to chase for an awful long time. That's when this group of 7 riders formed. Jens Voigt is in here, always very aggressive. Here is the king of the mountains. We can see him sitting at the back there, Frederik Voeckelen. He will run out as long as he can get himself to the end of Paris-Nice as the winner of this competition. But Bob, I think if you just have a look on his frame there, you can see he's actually put down the numbers of the distances of where all the climbs are.
He can look at the category of the climb. Also, he will know along the race course where they will come. He just has to look at his cyclo-computer to see what kilometer or what distance they are, and he'll be able to anticipate where the next climb is. And if you don't know these roads intimately, they can get really confusing, and all of the hills can start to blend into one another. But Voeckelen doing a little bit extra work, keeping the map taped to his top tube.
Well, as the blossoms start to come out in the springtime, this is known as the race to the sun. When we come back, we'll have a little bit more sunshine at Paris-Nice. Welcome back to the roads of stage 6 here in Paris-Nice. Number 18 at the back is Jens Voigt, one of the most talked about men in the sport, and he's been a professional since way back in 1996. But we've also talked about the combination of a number of teams to form mega squads during the winter months, like Omega Pharma, Quickstep, for example. Also the combination of the former Leopard Trek Radio Shack team to form this massive big squad, who we'll take a look at as our Road ID athlete profile today.
It started with just maybe a crazy idea. The idea of putting these 2 groups together was to me was crazy, and it seemed impossible. So basically, on the one hand, we had an organization looking for sponsors, and on the other hand, an organization looking for new talent. It's definitely one of the strongest teams I've ever seen in terms of quality. There's obviously riders with certain possibilities, but if it comes down to who's a real contender and who's a real candidate for the win, the guy with the best chances to win is Andy Schleck. He's been 3 times second in the last 3 years. He's definitely going to be the leader for the Tour.
The team is a lot stronger. You see the riders we have in the team, and I think you could do two tour teams with the riders we have here. One of my thoughts was Johan at that time with Radio Shack. He was for me the guy who had the most experience and the most knowledge, and the guy who knows how to win a tour.
Having a guy like Fabio Cancellara on the team is an honor, and is a big motivating factor for everybody. Is going to change everything.
I'm really excited actually to having the best riders in the world in one team. How everybody is motivated. That's actually, it's amazing. It's crazy already, and I'm looking really forward to everything, the classics and the big races.
Yeah, for me was a nice thing, because now we take all the best from both to one. Last year everybody was looking for Andy and for Frank, but now they need to look also to me and to Chris, or maybe to Maximum 4. Maybe a good situation also for Andy, because it takes a little bit pressure from him.
I think there was a lot of emotions, of course. I was clear in my head that hey, this is the best thing that could happen to us. We're gonna get a great team, great backup. So we knew that we're gonna be very, very strong, and this was going to be a great opportunity for us.
If I look now at the composition of the team and what we have put together, it's an amazing group of riders with very motivated sponsors behind it. So very, very excited about it.
And so that's why today Radio Shack is our Road ID athlete profile. And what a team. I mean, Bob, you have to admit, for Johan Brunel to manage something like that, it's a mega team.
Well, Johan Brunel, without a doubt, is the greatest sports director of all time. If you look at success in the Grand Tours, he does have the most promising young talent in the Tour also in Andy Schleck, and a mix of veterans as well. Fabian Cancellara, Chris Horner, and of course Frank Schleck, the brother of Andy Schleck, and Andreas Kloden. It is indeed a super squad.
Yeah, but just think about taking Fabian Cancellara to the classics, the Tour of Flanders at Paris-Roubaix, for example, with that monster team behind him. And I do know that, in fact, Fabian Cancellara, during the winter months, he came over to New York for a bit of a break, and he went out for dinner with Ben Stiller, who enjoys watching cycling, by the way.
Ben Stiller, a great supporter and follower of the sport of cycling, had the chance and honor to meet him at the Tour de France a couple of years ago.
Well, a surprise, though, Bob, when you look at the list of the roster of Radio Shack Nissan Track, they've only got one victory so far, and that goes, of course, to Fabian Cancellara, a man who always seems to be on form at the start of a season.
Fabian Cancellara dominating the proceedings in the Strade Bianche, a one-day race down in Italy that features a lot of roads similar to Paris-Roubaix, but rather than cobbles, they're dirt roads, and it's a very, very tough race. Frequent climbs throughout the day and terrible pavements. It makes this race not seem simple, but not seem quite as daunting.
Well, just a reminder, the 7 leaders now down to 2 minutes and 20 seconds advantage with 33.8 kilometers left to go to the finish. That's just 19.5 miles. And a reminder, going back to Radio Shack Nissan, that started the race with Andy Schleck and Frank Schleck. Frank is still in the race, but Andy Schleck had to pull out. The one thing that if Andy Schleck wants to win the Tour de France, if Johan Brunel can make him win the Tour de France, he's got to improve his time trialing ability.
He has most certainly has to improve that time trialing, his Achilles heel in his athletic career so far. And this year, especially in the Tour de France, over 100 kilometers of individual time trialing. They're going to spend a lot of time on the open roads by themselves doing the individual time trial, a very special discipline in cycling.
It certainly is, but I can't forget how fabulous Cancellara has been over the last couple of years in the one-day classics. And this year on NBC, we're going to get live coverage of Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. I've got goosebumps already.
Well, Fabian Cancellara was beaten both times last year. Very rare occurrence in the recent history of the big classics, Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. But this year he's back on great form. He's already won a big semi-classic in Italy. He's going to be very tough to beat in the cobbled classics of Northern Europe.
One man who might take him on is here in Paris-Nice, using Paris-Nice as a base to get himself the condition to go forward to the one-day classic. And of course, we've talked about him a lot. He's won a stage so far in this year's Paris-Nice. Big Tommeke Boonen.
Tom Boonen back on form himself. Let's not forget about Thor Hushovd. He's on an American team this year. That's BMC, Thor Hushovd. He hasn't won Paris-Roubaix, but he has a very good chance of that. He did win a similar stage during the Tour de France over the cobbles, the same ones used for Paris-Roubaix a couple years ago.
Well, looking at the long shadows, Bob, amazing. The colours here, the colours of Provence that we're going through here at the moment, it looks almost like the autumn time. Well, actually, we're at the other end of the year. This is the spring.
The only thing we've missed so far in this stage of Paris-Nice in the Provence is the lavender, perhaps around the next few corners.
Well, this leading group of 7 riders at one stage had a 4-minute advantage over the main field. As we now get down to the more important part of this course, the last 19 miles of racing, their gap is starting to tumble. With 19 miles left to go, they're 2.5 minutes ahead of the main field, but the main field is starting to take a serious interest in pulling this race all the way back together. But watch out for the man in orange, because he's looking for a win today. If you don't want to know the result of today's Tirreno Adriatico, look away and turn down the volume. But I can tell you the victory did go to Edvald Boasson-Hagen of Team Sky, Bob.
Another stage win for Team Sky in Tirreno. Mark Cavendish already tasting blood in Italy, but that is a great sprint win by the man from Norway, Edvald Boasson-Hagen.
We're going to talk a lot more about this young man. Still, Matthew Goss is the overall leader. That's the lead that he garnered in the opening days in Team Time Trial, where he steered Green Edge to victory. Don't forget, you can watch Tirreno Adriatico on Universal Sports at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time every day.
A lot of sprint finishes down in Italy. We haven't seen a lot of those so far in Paris. Just one taken out by Tom Boonen.
So a brief resume of the stage. 30.8 kilometers, 19 miles of racing left to go, and the 7 leaders are still holding on to a 2.5 minute advantage. But when you look at the length of the main field, all of a sudden it's starting to tell you the hammer is down.
Cofidis on the front of the peloton. That looks like Ryan Taramé. No stage wins so far in Paris-Nice for the French squad. Also, nobody high up in the overall standings. Trying to catch this breakaway. If they don't catch that breakaway, they don't have a chance for even a stage win.
It could very well be, Bob, that one or two of these teams are now starting to think that today could be a sprinter stage. Now, the reason Europcar have come to the front, they're thinking about their sprinter, Sebastian Chavanel, and also probably seeing Liquigas coming forward. A little bit despondent by the withdrawal earlier on today of Ivan Bassa, but they've got a very good sprinter in their midst, and he knows how to get over these last final climbs of the day, Elia Viviani.
And a tremendous helper Elia Viviani has. We just saw him on the front of the peloton there. Ted King, the man from New Hampshire, a young rider in Battenkill, New York. He made his bones. He was able to get a place on that very prestigious Italian squad, Liquigas Cannondale. Great to see Teddy King out on the open roads in the European stage races.
Well, just saw the man who leads the King of the Mountains classification going through there, Frederick Verkelen, keeping himself topped up with energy on a rather coolish day. But the sunshine is coming out. We're getting closer and closer to the Mediterranean, Bob. It's almost holiday season.
That's why they call it the race to the sun. Starting in the cold environs of northern France, this race was developed early on in its trajectory as an international bike race as a way to entice the people of Paris to come down to Nice. They would see the pictures of the Côte d'Azur and the warm sunshine. And as a holiday destination, that's how this race got started.
Just looking at the speed of the peloton, Bob, that really is quite remarkable. Casting my mind back to an event called the USA Pro Cycling Challenge last year in August. A certain Elia Viviani got himself 2 stage wins there on stages 4 and 5. He's had 5 wins so far this season, which is why I would think we're seeing the lime green jerseys of Liquigas Cannondale coming to the front.
Ted King, second wheel there. Elia Viviani, one of the fastest men in this bike race, caught out in the win battle on the only on paper sprinter stage in this week's Paris-Nice, and that was on stage number 2, won by Tom Bonin.
Well, the lime green shoes you can see at the back there on the BMC Racing Team rider. That's Marcus Burkhardt, a former winner of Ghent-Wevelgem and a very strong teammate for Cadel Evans last year.
Also the winner of Ghent-Wevelgem a few years ago, Marcus Burkhardt, stage winner in the Tour de France. Teammates of Cadel Evans. Always can tell Marcus Burkhardt in the BMC colors with the yellow shoes.
Well, you can get an idea of the speed these riders are charging along. And Bob, it's not for the moment having any serious effect on the time gap. 28.5 kilometers to go. That's 17 miles of racing, and it's still locked in. They've only shaved off 5 seconds. If they don't push it up a little bit more, those guys are going to start thinking about victory.
Oh, absolutely. A very high-powered breakaway with Luis Leon Sanchez and a rider of the caliber of Jens Voigt. Jens Voigt, very strong. This peloton has been in Indian file for many kilometers, and that gap is not plummeting down precipitously the way it normally would do for a normal breakaway situation. There is also a few extra riders, 7 men in the front group. That gives the breakaway a slight advantage. But when the whole peloton is chasing, it's almost impossible to stay away.
Well, you might just have noticed a little bit of a maneuver over on the left-hand side there. The rider in the pale blue jersey of Omega Pharma Quickstep, that was Levi Leipheimer, getting himself stripped down, Bob, for some serious racing, taking off the overshoes, getting off the extra jersey, because the race and the pressure now is hotting up.
Ted King to the front now, trying to catch this breakaway. 2 minutes 25 seconds to these 7 men in front, including the man in orange, Luis Leon Sanchez, looking for a little bit of success for the Rabobank squad. They haven't had much so far in Paris-Nice.
Well, the 7-man leading group, Bob, when you see a breakaway get clear off the front, if it's 3 or 4 riders in a long stage like this, everyone starts to get a little bit weaker down towards the end. You've left a lot of energy on the roads of something like Paris-Nice, but a 7-man breakaway, you share the pacemaking a lot easier over a long breakaway. They're still not looking like men starting to weaken. I think we could have a bit of a surprise this afternoon.
Also, you got to take into account the quality of racers in this breakaway. Daniel Navarro, Luis Leon Sanchez, and one of the strongest rollers in the peloton, Jens Voigt. A roller is a man capable of stomping the guts out of the rolling terrain that you see in a number of racers. There he is, number 18. Not as fast as the pure sprinters, Jens Voigt. Not as good a climber as the pure climbers. But every other stretch of road, he is an absolute beast.
Well, that was Mikel Scherl we're looking at there. Just going over the front there, Anthony Geslin, FDJ. The rider at the back here that we're just looking at, Bob, is rather interesting, but he's just gone through. In fact, Simon Getcher, he's on the new team, which was last year's Skill Shimano. His father was a very, very good track sprinter in the 72 and 76 Olympic Games. He got a silver medal in the tandem sprint, and then he got a bronze medal in 1976 in Montreal in the individual sprint.
From East Germany, as is Jens Voigt. Jens Voigt, one of the few pros to come from the Eastern Bloc, the former East Germany, still a professional cyclist. Jens Voigt getting a little bit long in his tooth, 40 years of age.
Ooh, a little bit of a split in the main field there. Look at that. Oh, Bob, this is a very long line, and it really is. The hammer is down now. It's coming from the sprinters teams. They want to try and turn the tables around. It is having an effect as well, because 2 minutes and 15 seconds, all of a sudden, the race and the fire is on in Paris-Nice. I certainly would not like to be in the second or the third group going down there, because you would be on the rivet, right on the very front of your saddle. Bradley Wiggins, surrounded by his merry men there in the yellow jersey, just ticking away the kilometers in Paris-Nice and waiting for the last day and the individual time trial up to the Col d'Ez. In the first hour of the bike race this afternoon, we rushed off at 27 miles an hour. The second hour, a little bit slower at 24 miles an hour. Here, we are hammering along the roads of Provence at approximately 31 miles an hour in the main field, and the damage, Bob, is being done before our very eyes.
Big splits in the peloton. You need to stay attentive in these bike races. They might come back together, but a lot of pressure being on the front of the field here. The Europa Car team taking up the challenge. Bradley Wiggins riding very well in the yellow jersey. He's got all his teammates surrounding him, and he stayed in that front group. If you're scrambling, if you're in the second or perhaps third group, that is a tough way for any stage of any bike race in the world, especially one as hard as Paris-Nice has been this year.
That's a very good point you raised there, Bob, because this Paris-Nice, I think, has been exceptionally difficult. There hasn't been an easy stage. From the very get-go in that opening time trial, it's been hammered down every day.
Well, stage number 2 would have been the one day where you could sit comfortably in the pack, expect a sprint finish, and get to the finish line without too much fatigue. But the wind had a different story to tell. It tore the peloton to smithereens, so even stage number 2, a flat stage for the sprinters, was very tough.
Certainly was. 24 kilometers to go now, and it is now starting to tumble slightly towards the advantage of the sprinters. It's 2 minutes with 24 kilometers to go, just coming down to my little favorite recipe there, Bob, of a minute for every 10 kilometers of the race is possible to pull back a breakaway group.
2 minutes and 5 seconds, 23.8 miles to go, about 14 miles left in the bike race. That gap has come down now, but in these last few kilometers that split the peloton, that cracked the peloton into 3 groups, has only taken about 10-15 seconds out of the breakaway. You have some great riders in the front. I love to go in a breakaway with Jens Voigt if I was still a professional. That's one of the few times you still have a chance to succeed.
Well, bear in mind, Bob, that we're going to go into Sisteron, and then we'll do a 19-kilometer circuit around Sisteron with a nasty little climb in it with the speed of the main field. Do you think that this breakaway group is going to survive here this afternoon?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say they'll be caught. No, it's anybody's ball game. They could get caught. They could stay away conceivably, and we haven't had a breakaway so far in Paris-Nice that has even had a chance to stay away. This is the first one that most certainly does. There is one tough climb, 1.3 kilometers in length, 7% average gradient. So a tough little climb at the finish. That might give the advantage to the breakaway. If you're a sprinters team and you're chasing this breakaway to keep your sprinter in contention, and you get to a steep, stiff climb like we're going to see on the finishing circuit in the streets of Sisteron, well, then your sprinter might get dropped. That gives the advantage to the breakaway. You're at least going to have to hesitate to nurse your sprinter across that last climb of the day. So advantage to the breakaway. They still have 7 men. They've all been cooperating very well, and they do have a almost 2 minute advantage with about 13 miles left in the bike race.
Well, as you're saying, Bob, it could go down to the roll of the dice on that circuit, the 19-kilometer circuit. This breakaway group of 7 riders just up the road has got firepower in the form of Jens Voigt, in the form of Luis Leon Sanchez, and, of course, Anthony Geslin, quite an expert when it comes to long-distance breakaways like this. And, of course, we've seen a very in-form Frederick Verkeulen. It's going to be a hard chase to try and pull that breakaway back.
Absolutely. The yellow jersey team of Bradley Wiggins may be the highest-powered team in the whole peloton. Conceivably, if they went to the front, chase flat out, they would be able to catch the breakaway. They do not need to do that. Bradley Wiggins needs to conserve 3 minutes and 51 seconds from Luis Leon Sanchez. That gap has already been realized. It's under 2 minutes now. So Sky, the strongest team in the bike race, is not worried about this time gap. they can sit back and let the other teams chase if they want to, and maybe they're not capable of catching this high-powered 7-man breakaway containing Luis Leon Sanchez, Jens Voigt, and the king of the mountain, Frederick Vukelen.
Well, a little bit of our French lessons there, by the way. Tête de la course means the front end of the bike race. And you might just have noticed the street sign there for Sisteron, where we're just coming into the outskirts of Sisteron, which in fact in itself is a medieval city. And it's perched right on the top of a nice little rock outcrop looking down over the river Durance. Little town here of Les Bons Enfants, which means the good kids. So I think those kids go to school on time every day.
The good kids in the breakaway, average kids in the peloton. Will they be all together at the finish line? It's anybody's bike race at this point in the day.
We're looking down here, Bob, on the river Durance, which is a very strange river. It can be torrents coming down from the mountains. It raises up at 2,500 meters in altitude at the summit of the Col des Anges, which is not too far away from Briançon. And it makes its way right the way down to the River Rhône, just by Avignon. So 7 men still hoping to survive, and they're hoping to get themselves into Sisteron and go out on that 19-kilometer circuit, and they will hope that they can hold on to just enough time to survive and maybe outwit the peloton here this afternoon, but they've still got 1 minute 42 seconds in hand. Looking down at the river Durance as it winds its way down to Provence and out into the Bouches-du-Rhône, not too far away from Marseille. We're looking at the main field here, Bob, and it's now starting to tumble. 20 kilometers is the advantage, 1.5 minutes. There's a long line of riders at the front end of that peloton.
Now serious pressure coming from the peloton, putting the breakaway in jeopardy. 1 minute and 30 seconds, and they've taken down a minute in just the last few kilometers. So now the peloton has got their steam together. One obstacle between the breakaway and the finish line, that's a category 3 climb. We'll have to see what that does to the rhythm of the peloton. The breakaway still working well. They've been very cooperative with each other throughout the stage, and that is an indication they might still have a chance to succeed.
Now don't get confused, by the way. You might just have seen the red kite, which normally indicates the final kilometer of a bike race. Well, that was the final kilometer before we go out onto the 19-kilometer circuit. So there is a sprint point these riders are going to go through just here. There are time bonuses available, but for them it's not really that important. It's more important to the riders behind if they could catch them, but that's not going to happen here this afternoon. Does, though, give the sprinters, Bob, if they're going to catch back up, a chance to have a dress rehearsal of the finish. They'll see exactly what the finishing line is going to look like.
This is the finishing straightaway, just a few hundred meters to go. The breakaway will have a great look at it. The peloton as well. They're going to come through in about 1 minute and 25 seconds. There's the finish line just in the distance. The breakaway being led by one of the strongest men in all of cycling, Jens Voigt, the veteran from Germany, now on the American Radio Shack squad.
You might just hear the bell indicating 1 lap to go, 1 minute and 25 seconds. Well, Bob, do you feel that this breakaway is going to get caught here this afternoon? Let me just tell you a few facts about Paris-Nice finishes here in Sisteron. Well, the race has finished here on 6 occasions previously, going back to 1997, with a win by Laurent Jalabert from a breakaway. André Schmil, who is in the race here for Team Katusha as the team manager, he won in 98. Jackie Durand won in 99. Matteo Tossato the year after that. Then Alex Zula, he won in 2001. And Carlos Boredo, who rides for Team Rabobank, he won this race in the race into Sisteron in 2008. Now he must be thinking about a victory for his man Luis Leon Sanchez in the breakaway.
Interestingly, not one of those riders a sprinter, so the indication is the breakaway still might have a chance to succeed with just under 20 kilometers to go and only a 1 minute and 18-second advantage. Peloton chasing hard. Very unlikely that the breakaway will stay away. Somebody's going to have to make an absolutely exceptional effort to keep that break off the front of the bike race.
Well, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say they will get caught. You can see the gap down to 1 minute and 18 seconds. There's the bell indicating there's one last lap, 19 kilometers to go to the finishing line. There are so many sprinters still left in this bike race, Bob, which they'll have nothing to shout about over the weekend, because the weekend is uphill and down dale and then bang up to the top of the Col d'Ez with a very difficult individual time trial. So the sprinters, one last chance today.
One last chance at 1 minute and 15 seconds between the sprinters and catching that breakaway, if they're even going to have a chance to go for the stage win. If the breakaway is to succeed, they cannot stop cooperating with each other until the last couple of 100 meters of the bike race. They all have to work hard throughout the rest of the stage. It's under 18 kilometers now, just over 17 Ks before the finish line. The breakaway, they have to stick together, they have to work together, and before they start that aggressive accelerations and fighting against each other, they still have to do work with each other.
Well, they certainly did. A beautiful river, this River Durance, as I mentioned earlier, 350 kilometers long as we go back to the 7-man leading group. They are all still cooperating, as you said, Bob, but they can't yet start to mess around and think about a lone attack towards the finish. I'm sure in the back of his mind, the rider in the orange jersey there, and that, of course, Luis Leon Sanchez, he's thinking about a lone attack on that final climb. That, by the way, is the castle that was built back in the 12th century, the old Chateau Fort, the castle above Sisteron, perched on that little rock just looking down into the River Durance below.
The citadel there built to hold off the Saracen. The Saracen hordes, it was not successful. The Saracens did overrun Sisteron a few hundred years ago.
They certainly did. And by the way, if you've ever been a Boy Scout, Bob, there in fact is a Baden-Powell Scout Museum here in Sisteron. So next time you go down there, you can go and get 1 or 2 of your new badges.
We'll have to check it out. It's Mark Cavendish won a stage in the Tour de France in 2010 that didn't finish here, but started here in Sisteron. It was going in the other direction towards the flatlands, and that stage finished in Bourg-en-Valence.
Oh, I tell you what, that is a very long and angry peloton this afternoon with a lot of riders. There's not one single team doing the pacemaking at the front, Bob. There's a combination of teams. A lot of riders are thinking about their sprint victories. And, of course, why not Tom Bonin again if he can get himself over that climb? The climb situated at around about 5 kilometers to go to the finish. If any of the sprinters do get dropped, they've got a great chance of getting back into the event.
10 miles to go in the bike race. 1 minute and 8 seconds is the gap. A very high-powered breakaway off the front of the field, including the tall German Jens Voigt. Affable, articulate, and rare for a cyclist. He's forthright. He comes to the front and does the work.
Well, they're just taking his gloves off, getting ready for action this afternoon. That's Levi Leipheimer. Now, we talked to a man this morning who is normally very economical with his words, and that's Wilfred Peters, and he's the Belgian team manager on Levi Leipheimer's team. He said, don't discount Levi Leipheimer. He said, there's nothing we can do on the race now down towards the finish to get any more time back on a guy like Bradley Wiggins. We're just looking after Leipheimer. What we want to do is go all the way down to the wire, because he believes, with the fact that it's an uphill time trial, that Levi Leipheimer's got the chance and the advantage to come up with a surprise win on the final day. So as we continue this long, fast ride alongside the River Durance, when we come back, we're going to have lots more action from Paris-Nice this afternoon, and maybe the breakaway will get caught. 5 kilometers to go, 15 kilometers at 9.5 miles of racing left, and you can see that the pain is certainly creeping into the main field at the back. Joining the breakaway riders, experienced riders, we've said. The man we're looking at in the orange and blue jersey from Team Rabobank, he's had previous success in Paris-Nice. Bob, he's won 3 stages before. Jens Voigt is also on a stage at Paris-Nice. That's Jens Voigt just over on the right-hand side there with the black shirt on from Radio Shack Nissan. He won a prologue time trial of Paris-Nice a couple of years ago.
Luis Leon Sanchez, a very clever bike racer. It never ceases to amaze me that other riders will be cooperating with the rider the caliber of Luis Leon Sanchez. It seems as if a strange form of amnesia and exuberance comes into the other riders in a breakaway situation like this. When you get Luis Leon Sanchez close to the finish line and work with him throughout the day, he punishes you in the sprint finish. We've seen him do that a number of times in his career.
Well, this is what we expected. This is the 3rd category climb, and the man there in the orange jersey, Luis Leon Sanchez, as soon as there's a slight incline, Bob, he starts to put the screws on. Maybe we'll start to see if there are any weak passengers in this breakaway. None of the other 5 riders in this breakaway group have had any success at Paris-Nice before, and Luis Leon Sanchez, he knows that this is the best place to launch the attack.
Advantage here to the breakaway now, a steep little climb, a little valley road there next to the River Durance. Hard left-hand turn. Luis Leon Sanchez not hesitating at all, goes right to the front and puts the hammer down. Half of the men are in deep trouble in this breakaway. Jens Voigt being able to close that juncture now down to Luis Leon Sanchez, but Vukelen in big trouble.
Well, Vukelen, his job done for the day. Let's not forget, Bob, he's used an awful amount of energy over the last couple of days to build up this unassailable lead in the King of the Mountains classification. But as far as Luis Leon Sanchez is concerned, the group is too big now. It's too risky to take 5, 6, 7 men down to the finish line. So if you want to win, the best way to win is on your own from a breakaway group.
And this must be Ray and Taramay from the Cofidis squad. They have done a lot of work in this chase to keep the breakaway honest. That 1 minute advantage for the break. The kilometers are tipping down now. 12.7 Ks to go, about 7 miles, and that gap still hovering at 1 minute.
Well, the way that he's launched the attack there, I think he's actually taken the cooperation out of this leading group of riders. They now know Luis Leon Sanchez is strong. They now know that he wants to win the stage. And I think once we get over the top of this climb, Bob, he won't have too many friends left with him to do the pacemaking.
The knives have come out. The cooperation is gone. You're absolutely right. Luis Leon Sanchez has thrown down the gauntlet. Charel and Jens Voigt have been able to match that acceleration. But the cooperation now, that is a thing of the past. Now it is a fight to the finish for the breakaway.
Well, the breakaway splitting up now one by one now. A bit surprised to see that car come round there, Bob. That would be an indication to me that the race referees are starting to think that the breakaway is going to get caught in the final kilometre up to the top of this climb. Now, just check at that. The gap has gone back up to the 1 minute and 5 second mark. Now, it could well be that we're seeing the turning point. The referee is out of the gap. The neutral service car is behind. But Charel is now the rider, deciding that this is a good chance for him to get himself, first of all, a podium position. And maybe if he's got that little bit more energy left in those legs of his, he could get himself a win today.
Michael Charel doing a good job, the French rider in this breakaway now, to cover the move by perhaps the two most decorated men from the breakaway, Jens Voigt and Luis Leon Sanchez. Jens Voigt, what a career he's had. 3 stage wins in the Tour de France and 5 wins in the Criterium International.
Jens Voigt there just switching over to the right-hand side, looking for some help and assistance to keep the pace nice and high. Another thing, when I was talking to Wilfred Peters this morning, Bob, about his team, Omega Pharma Quickstep, he said, we've had a lot of wins this year, 21 wins in total, but they've been by 8 different riders. As you see, the Aussie champion here, Simon Gerrans, obviously still paying for that accident he had a couple of days ago.
Simon Gerrans perhaps paying for that crash he had when he had a chance to win the stage a couple days ago. Also, David Moncoutier, the Frenchman, continuing to struggle in Paris-Nice.
Yeah, but it's still Omega Pharma Quickstep are very, very keen to whip up the pacemaking. The time gap is being given to us at 1 minute and 5 seconds, but I would think, Bob, it might be just a little bit inside of that, as you can see the damage that's being done. I noticed that Sylvain Chavanel recovered a little bit. He had a hard time yesterday on the climb up to Mende and the airstrip up there, as Tony Martin is being asked to do the pacemaking. Now, can you see the big figure of Tom Bonen there, Bob?
Tom Bonen down the line of Quick-Step riders. You can see him just there, 5th wheel. Sylvain Chavanel, he's on the wheel of Domestique Deluxe, defending champion Tony Martin of the Omega Quick-Step squad. Tony Martin won this race last year, but this year he's doing the teamwork for Levi Leipheimer. Levi Leipheimer just there in the very tip of that spear. He is 3rd wheel in perfect position on today's stage. Levi won't worry about this breakaway too much. What he wants to do is stay out of trouble, and it's a very technical run in the streets of Sisteron for the finish.
Well, it's going to be touch and go, this, Bob, with 11.5 kilometers to go to the finish. That's about 7 miles of racing at 1:08. They've got the advantage, the 3 leaders here, of being on these very narrow little roads, which will make it more difficult for the main field to get themselves organized into that great big train to try and pull them back in the final few meters.
Well, there's 3 or 4 riders in between our leading 3 in the peloton. They have not been caught yet. It might be that Vukelen is about to get picked up. He was the first man dropped on that last climb, but 3 men now have broken away from the original 7 in the break, and here they are: Luis Leon Sanchez, Jens Voigt, and Michael Charel from the AG2R squad.
The trickier the route is on the run in towards the finish now, the more the advantage will go to these 3 riders that we're looking at here, because both Luis Leon Sanchez and Jens Voigt are very, very good bike handlers. They know how to get themselves around those corners at high speed. So the peloton, though, you can see the fact that there's no cars behind the peloton. That's also an indication that 1 or 2 riders did get dropped on that final car. The race is controlled by the referees, who are either in the cars in front of the race, behind the race, or even on the motorbike as well, to pass the information, to make sure that the race is kept in a secure, sanitized envelope as it moves through the country of France.
And amazingly, the gap has gone up a little bit. Now it's at 1 minute and 8 seconds to the 3 men in front. That's almost impossible to do when the whole peloton peloton is chasing. Advantage breakaway.
Well, advantage breakaway, Jens Voigt. I love the style of Jens Voigt. When you see him rocking and rolling like that, you know that he's dishing out pain. And we've been talking about wattages. I'll tell you right now, if we could just get into the watt meter of Jens Voigt, he would probably be on the slopes of this climb tipping 450 to 500 watts of effort.
Big watts by Jens Voigt, no doubt about that. Charel having trouble matching that acceleration by Jens Voigt. Luis Leon Sanchez very cleverly, he's asked Charel to come through and contribute to the pacemaking.
The man in the back there in the blue shorts, the Rabobank rider, he looked like a cat there, didn't he, Bob? He looked as if he was waiting for pounce. He was waiting to see if there was going to be any weakness in the Frenchman that he could take advantage of. But still, the pressure is on. 10 kilometers to go, 6.2 miles as the main field. Oh, and he's cracked. Charel has cracked because of the pressure of a certain man from Eastern Germany, Jens Voigt.
That's a very clever move by Luis Leon Sanchez. He had Charel come through and close that gap down to the acceleration by Jens Voigt. When Charel weakened a little bit, Luis Leon Sanchez went right across to the wheel of Jens Voigt.
Well, Bob, you know, we talked about riders in the breakaway of 7 a few moments ago who'd won stages in Paris-Nice before. Only 2 of them had, and here they are, Jens Voigt and Luis Leon Sanchez.
Jens Voigt's won a prologue in Paris-Nice before. He's always been very competitive in this bike race, but Luis Leon Sanchez, 3 wins in Paris-Nice in his career, also an overall title just in 2009.
Well, I wonder if you were trying to predict something this morning when you asked me the question, when was the last time that Jens Voigt actually had a bike race win? Well, it has to go back to 2010 in September. That's the last time he actually won himself a bike race. And I wonder if he's going to change that this afternoon, because one team who were trying to set something up for their sprinter, as we see one of the survivors of the breakaway, Frederik Verkelen, he'd be back in the main field. Nothing too disappointed by his ride today. He's consolidated his lead in the King of the Mountains classification. But Omega Pharma Quickstep, they are thinking about a win for Tom Bonen.
Omega Pharma Quickstep, they have Tom Bonen in their ranks. A very versatile rider and a great sprinter is Bonen. All they have to do is close a 1 minute and 12-second gap to our 2 leaders.
Well, 5 miles to go, and they're stretching out the advantage, these 2 men at the front of the bike race. It's now 1 minute and 12 seconds over the front end of the peloton. I, for one now, Bob, am starting to will these riders on. I'm hoping they're going to survive for just 5 more miles. And that will take them right into the finish. Well, we're now into the final kilometers of this very long, hard 178-kilometer, 100-mile race that the riders left from Suze-la-Rousse this morning to charge into Sisteron. And these men in the main field will not lay down their arms, as Frederik Verkelen is just holding on to the back end of the main field. But to him, the day has been a success already. The long line, but I can hardly believe, Bob, that those 2 riders are surviving and holding on to that minute and 12 seconds. When you look at the powerhouse team here, Omega Pharma Quickstep, it should theoretically be impossible for them to survive, but they're doing it.
It's unbelievable. Here on the front, you have Sylvain Chavanel, one of the best time trialists in the world. On his wheel, Tony Martin, perhaps the best, doing hard work at the front, and Jens Voigt and Luis Leon Sanchez still holding off the peloton.
Talk about throwing punches at each other. What an acceleration there from Luis Leon Sanchez, and he put Jens Voigt into a spot of bother. But big Jens, he will not go down without a fight, and he comes back, he struggles back to the wheel, and still, Bobby, goes over the top. These guys know that little meter you can see on the front of his handlebars, by the way, that is where a lot of the information is recorded that we get access to sometimes at some of the races, either the rider's heart rate or their wattage. And I'd say right now we're looking at some serious watts.
Some serious watts and some serious miles per hour. A slight little downhill. Luis Leon Sanchez and Jens Voigt, 2 veterans, 2 very successul cyclists. They know that to have a chance, they have to work together well, and they've been doing that. They've been cooperating. That gives them a little bit of an advantage, but they just lost 7 seconds of their advantage in the last about 500 meters.
Well, let's just put it into perspective as well, Bob. Neither of those riders are at all dangerous in the overall race, because Luis Leon Sanchez was the best placed rider at the start of the day. He was 3 minutes and 51 seconds behind the overall leader of Bradley Wiggins. Jens Voigt was in 34th place, so they're not going to change the overall standings currently, but what they do want to do is survive and get themselves the victory. I'm trying to figure out, Bob, if they do survive, and I'm starting to think that they may well just steal the glory this afternoon of the sprinters, who do you think is going to win?
Who's the best sprinter between these 2? flip of a coin. Both of them very successful. Jens Voigt has a tremendous turn of speed. Luis Leon Sanchez, very clever. A little bit of a miscalculation by Jens Voigt there. He swung across, and he has such powerful legs, he almost tangled with the back wheel of Luis Leon Sanchez.
Yep, but these two riders, they know they are experienced riders, both of them 40 years of age for Jens Voigt in the second position there, wearing number 18 with their Nissan written across his shorts. He knows they cannot start to playing their cat and mouse tactics just now. They've got to keep going hard all of the time, because even in the last couple of kilometers, that main field can wipe out a minute just like that.
And let's not forget, there's 3 men in between the gap. They're at 25 seconds behind Jens Voigt and Luis Leon Sanchez, between the 2 leaders and this big peloton, with theoretically most of the sprinters still left. It's a very big group with 3 miles to go. A little bit of a false flat here, 5 Ks to the finish line.
This could be doing damage to the leading Tuberati. You don't notice there the little flick of the arm by Jens Voigt. That's one of those professional courtesies to say, okay, I've done my turn at the front now. You come over and relay me. Now, when you're working in a situation like this, Bob, you do get a little bit of respite when you're sitting in second position because of the slipstreaming effect.
Yes, most definitely. That is the position you want to be when somebody's doing work. Also, these 2 riders have had a chance to look at the finishing straightaway, and let's see who's done the homework, Luis Leon Sanchez or Jens Voigt. Both of them going flat out 19 kilometers ago when the group came through Sisteron for the first passage. That was a very tough circuit that they went through, and a big hard climb, category 3, halfway through that last lap around the village of Sisteron. So now they'll know exactly what to expect. It'll just come down to who has the best legs.
That's a bit of a surprise too there, Bob, because the men who were in that leading group, they're still surviving, 20 seconds off the 2 leaders. Now, this is going to be a very, very strange racer. Don't forget, whenever we look at Luis Leon Sanchez, he's the national time trial champion of Spain. He knows how to ride well, especially on his own going down towards the end of a race like this.
4 men just 15 seconds behind our 2 leaders, caught in no man's land between the peloton and our 2 leaders. But those 4 riders have been in the breakaway with our 2 leaders throughout the proceedings. They were dropped on that last climb by the accelerations from Luis Leon Sanchez and Jens Voigt, but they still do have a chance in the closing 4 kilometers to catch our 4 leaders. Then it would be a wild scramble to the finish line. When you're with another rider, it's a lot simpler. The math equation comes way down. You just have to beat 1 guy. But if 4 guys catch you, then it becomes a race for 6. They want to keep themselves in front of those 4 men to have a fair shot at the finish line.
Just looking at, well, briefly looking at the difference in the 2 styles of those riders, the punchy style of Jens Voigt, it looks as if he wants to beat the hell out of his machine there just to keep it going forward. These guys are slipping backwards now. If they look over their shoulders, they will see the main peloton. And again, Bob, this is a little bit of confusion because the peloton will be looking at these guys. They might not even know that the 2 riders have gone in front.
Well, they've caught one, Vukelen, who was the king of the mountain. That's pretty obvious as he came back through the field. And you're absolutely right. When they see these 4 riders and they're just about to make the juncture to them, they might hesitate for just a little bit of time and give the advantage over to the breakaway.
Well, there you go. 3 kilometers to go, 1 minute and 5 seconds, and they still continue to work hard, these 2 riders. Jens Voigt has got the power in those legs this afternoon. Luis Leon Sanchez, Bob, he looks fantastic on a bike. A lot of people compared him to the great Miguel Indurain, who won the Tour de France on 5 occasions. He's smooth and comfortable.
Luis Leon Sanchez, hired by the Rabobank squad from Holland to do just this, go out and get stage wins in the prestigious stage races like Pyrenees. Luis Leon Sanchez, one of the most successful Spanish cyclists in the current era, very reminiscent of Miguel Indurain, and now he has a chance, probably his best chance of Pyrenees so far, to win a stage.
Well, as we look now, the main field, they're about to pull those 4 riders back into the fold, and then they've got to stretch their necks around a little bit further to have a look up the road, and it's still around about the 1 minute mark here. A lot of work being done by Omega Pharma Quickstep. They were looking for the victory for Tom Bonen here this afternoon, but all of a sudden when you see them go across the road like that, Bob, it's an indication the power's coming off.
I think they have done. They've hesitated a little bit. They caught the 4 men that were with Jens Voigt and Luis Leon Sanchez, and immediately you saw the accordion effect, and that means the pressure is off from the leaders, and the other riders that are a little bit further behind in the peloton, they sort of rotate to the forward position. That means they're not in Indian file and the pressure off a little bit.
Well, as I say, this looks like Nicholas Roach coming out of the move here for Team AG2R, but this is really what the French would call some wet dynamite, because that's not really a hard attack. He's not going to ride across 2 minutes at all. He might be looking to try and get himself a 3rd or 4th place. As the King of the Mountains leader, Freddie Verkelen here, he slips back away from the race. He'll just cruise to the finishing line. Luis Leon Sanchez, Bob, in the front. Let's not forget that he was the winner of this race back in 2009, and he won a great stage in the Tour de France last year. Jens Voigt is not one of the great sprinters in the world, but neither is Luis Leon Sanchez, so it's going to be a very difficult situation for who's going to lead who out for the sprint.
Very similar characteristics physiologically for these two men. Not great sprinters, not the best climbers either, but on a stage like this, it's either one of them can win the race, assuming they found the breakaway, which they did do, and they've assured the success of that, and they've worked very well together. It'll be a shame to lose this. Both men deserving winners.
Well, certainly, and I tell you what, Luis Leon Sanchez looks very good. He's a winner. Jens Voigt hasn't won for a couple of years, and he will want to try and get a victory under his belt for Radio Shack Nissan Trek, because let's not forget, we mentioned earlier, they've only had 1 victory so far this season. Now they can figure out the tactics. 1,000 meters to go. They've seen this before, Bob. They've had the dress rehearsal. If you were Luis Leon Sanchez in a situation like this, what would you do?
Shake of the head there. Luis Leon Sanchez wants to try to pretend that he can pull through. Jens Voigt's not having any of that, and he said, Luis, you're going to have to lead it out. So Luis Leon Sanchez just went to the front.
Well, Tony Martin, job done for him here this afternoon as we get closer. Now you see, very good, Bob. Jens Voigt wants to have the slipstream of Luis Leon Sanchez. It's a little bit easier to come out of the slipstream, and of course you're in a control position because you're looking at the rider in front and you know when he's going to start to sprint.
Well, these are two veterans, but this is a very dangerous situation. They cannot hesitate very long before they start their sprints, or they'll be caught by the peloton. The peloton can take 50 seconds away from a break rate just in the blink of an eye. Luis Leon Sanchez looking back over the shoulder of Jens Voigt to see exactly where the peloton is. He'll want to start a sprint, and this is going to be about timing and also about pure power. Jens Voigt has the advantage in this situation, if you ask me.
Well, they're not really concerned about time here, these riders. They know they've survived. They're inside the final 500 meters, so now we're looking at Jens Voigt. He's looking at the rider in front. He's waiting for the twitch. He's waiting for the acceleration. They're side by side. Maybe they're going to do the honourable thing and do the drag strip. Now Luis Leon Sanchez has got himself into 2nd position. Starting the sprint is big Jens Voigt. He's got that big gear in. You've got to have the right gear in. Sanchez is waiting, though, for the moment. He's in an ideal position, the Spanish rider. Look at the calmness on his face here. He comes up alongside the German now. Jens Voigt has got the big gear going, though. Can Sanchez do it? He's coming up to me, coming up alongside him now. And yes, it's Luis Leon Sanchez gets the victory for Rabobank, Bob. We've talked about him for days and days and days as we go back for the sprint now. There you can see right in the middle, the big charge over on the left-hand side is Henrik Hausler there is going to kind of get it for Garmin Barracuda on the line. He was the man we predicted to win yesterday. He will be so upset, Bob, that he missed out with a 2-man breakaway surviving.
Well, he'll be upset at that. Also, Viviani, 2nd in that field sprint for 4th, but what a great effort by Luis Leon Sanchez. It was a bike lean. It was so very close. A shame for Jens Voigt to lose that when he was so close to victory.
Well, he had the big gear in, Bob, but at 40 years of age, he doesn't quite have those fast twitch muscles anymore. Luis Leon Sanchez looked a little bit calmer, but he wasn't convinced of his victory until the very last moment.
Here is Jens Voigt leading it out. Very clever maneuver by Luis Leon Sanchez. Soft pedal just long enough. He gambled on losing, and that's how he won the day. Just barely getting the better of Jens Voigt. Take a quick gander at the Hausler sprint. This is the field sprint for 3rd place. Normally, it would be a foregone conclusion. This would have been a field sprint. There's Hausler, number 1. He's got to come around 8 guys in the last 150 meters of the bike race. He's waiting for the right moment, being led out by the man from Europcar. Comes around a number of riders. That's the other riders. He just barely gets through this gap. Elia Viviani has already started his sprint, but a great acceleration by Henrik Hausler. If only that breakaway had been caught. What a great stage win that would have been. Clean victory there in the field sprint, but only for 3rd place.
Well, let's get confirmation of all of those results then. Luis Leon Sanchez getting the victory just ahead of Jens Voigt. Henrik Hausler leading the bunch home in 3rd place. Viviani 4th. Gregor Bole of Lampre ISD in 5th. Further down, all the big sprinters. Sami Dumoulin in 7th place. Romain Felu of France in 8th. And Jacopo Guerini in there for Astana. All all those riders 14 seconds behind the two winners. So we hear now and see the finish of the King of the Mountains, and what a day out he's had over these last 2 days of racing. So as we look at these riders coming into the finish line, one more look at the victory by Luis León Sanchez. When we come back after the break, we'll have a look at the overall classification and the podiums. It's always very, very difficult when two riders charge to the finish line together, because only one man can win. On this occasion, Luis León Sanchez has got that victory Bob he's been chasing for a couple of days.
Last year, he won a stage in the Tour de France from a breakaway. Specialist in the discipline of breaking away, Luis León Sanchez, another great win on his palmarès, his credit of win.
Yes, his victory last year in the Tour de France from that breakaway was into Saint-Flour. This victory in Paris-Nice, his fourth stage win in Paris-Nice, is into Sisteron, and what a ride that was for him. The Michelob Ultra ride of the day.
Duel in the sun of Sisteron, and it is Luis León Sanchez just getting the better of Jens Voigt. A shame one of these great champions has to lose. That gives Luis León Sanchez the opportunity to salute his kids at home with the traditional thumb-sucking salute.
And so that was our Michelob Ultra ride of the day. No change in the overall standing. Still the same Brit on top of the leaderboard. Bradley Wiggins now looking very resplendent in yellow.
Bradley Wiggins, your overall leader after stage 6 of Paris. It's been a very tough week of racing so far. 2 days to go for glory, and one final decisive time trial up the Col d'Ez.
It's going to be an amazing weekend of cycling here on the NBC Sports Network. There's no real change because Wiggins still leads by 6 seconds from Louis Vistra. Levi Leipheimer, I think, is very, very dangerous there in third place. And as we look a little bit further down, we start to see the names of some of the other big champions who've lost out so far. TJ Van Garderen down there in 6th place. Maxime Montfort with a good time trial there on the final day. He could also move up inside of the top 5. So let's have a look at some of the other notables. 24th, Brent Buchwalter up there in 4:45. Ted King doing a lot of work for his team in 141st, but he's already lost 53 minutes and 20 seconds. Bob, TJ Van Garderen, he lost a little bit of time on the climb up to Mons, but he still thinks he can make it onto the podium on Sunday.
3 men leapfrog in front of him in the overall standings on yesterday's stage to Mons, but because of the time trial, and TJ Van Garderen is a very good time trialist, he thinks that he can get those places back and wind up on the podium once we finish the stage race down in Nice.
Yeah, Bob, let's not forget, though, this man, we're putting a lot of pressure onto his shoulders already, and he's only 23 years of age. We expect to see him develop over the next couple of seasons. Well, tomorrow, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with Stage 7, the longest day on the bike. The penultimate stage offers no respite. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the NBC Sports Network. And don't forget, don't miss the launch of Major League Soccer Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. It's FC Dallas taking on the New York Red Bulls. And for a full cycling schedule, log on to our website at nbcsports.com. And from all of us here at the all-new NBC Sports Network, don't forget, we're going to have a great weekend of racing.